The red light blinked on and off like a tiny heartbeat. Lucy stood on her chair, one socked foot tucked underneath her for balance, staring at the family's video camera perched at the edge of her desk. It shouldn't have been there. Her brother had borrowed it that afternoon, and he never left things out. Rain ticked against the window beside her. The sound filled the small room, steady but uneven. Soft taps, then a long sigh as a gust pressed the glass. Downstairs, the television murmured through the thin walls, her mother's favorite quiz show running as she folded laundry after another late shift. Lucy listened, waiting for a cue, but none came. The camera's soft red pulse went on, blinking. She reached for it, small fingers brushing the cool plastic, then pulled back. He'd get in trouble if their mom knew he'd used it again. But why had he left it recording? She squinted at the lit screen, half expecting nothing but the usual mess of homework files and short skits Daniel had made back when he wanted to be a filmmaker. They hadn't looked through those together in months. Still, a hum filled her chest as she pressed the rewind button, just a few seconds back, just to see if there was a reason. Static crackled through the tiny speaker. Then, faintly, someone exhaled. Not laughter, not a word. A sound caught between a hiccup and a sob. Lucy's hand froze over the controls. Maybe it was the TV from earlier. Maybe Daniel had set his music to record. But when she turned the volume up a little, the room seemed to tighten. The soft crying grew clearer, just underneath the hiss of rain. Her thumb hovered above the stop button. She could stop it now and pretend it hadn't happened. Pretend the blinking light meant nothing at all. Instead, she pressed play again. The first image flickered, shaky and dark. A glimpse of ceiling beams, a bare bulb trembling in its socket. Then the camera steadied on Daniel's face. He was sitting cross-legged on the old attic rug, shoulders hunched, hair falling forward. He looked older somehow, though he was only 14. Lucy's breath hitched. She had never seen him like that, not even when he'd broken his wrist skating last summer. His lips moved, but the sound caught on static again, forcing her to lean closer. Slowly, the words came through. "I don't know what's wrong with me," he whispered. A long pause. I can't make it stop." She blinked, unsure what it was. The sobs that followed were quiet, the kind made when someone has learned to cry without being heard. In the background, she could hear the faint hum of wind beneath the roof. The attic had always frightened her, but his voice made it worse. He looked straight into the lens then, eyes rimmed red. "I wish I could be normal again." Lucy's heart thudded hard enough to blur her vision. For a moment, she thought he might look her way, see her through the tiny screen. She fumbled to pause the playback, but the camera kept going. He covered his face with his hands, shaking. A strange mix of guilt and fear tangled up inside her. She wasn't supposed to see this. No one was. Downstairs, the audience on the TV applauded some right answer. Rain slipped harder down the glass. Lucy stood still, the camera heavy now in her small hands, her brother's quiet crying echoing in her head. She didn't understand what had happened. Not yet. She only knew the red light wasn't blinking anymore because it had finally stopped recording. And somewhere above her, the attic waited, holding the part of her brother she had never known existed. By the next morning, the sky had cleared, but the air still smelled of rain. Lucy sat at the kitchen table, tracing lines in the damp ring her orange juice glass left on the wood. Across from her, Daniel moved carefully through his breakfast like someone pretending to be hungry. Their mother paced between stove and sink, her nursing scrubs wrinkled from the night before. "Lucy, shoes on in 10, okay?" she said, balancing coffee in one hand and a phone in the other. When she turned toward Daniel, her voice softened. "You managed to finish that English project?" He nodded without looking up. "Yeah, mostly." Lucy watched the back of his hand tighten around his spoon. Once, he'd have teased her about her messy ponytail or passed her the sugar with a silly grin. Now he seemed to see everything through fog, noticing nothing but still breathing the same air beside her. The difference sat heavy between them, as real as the ticking clock above the fridge. When their mother hurried out the door, the house fell into its usual weekday silence. Daniel rinsed his bowl, then lingered over the sink, as if waiting for something to happen. The kitchen window caught the light in his eyes. A dull glow, not the bright spark that had once led him to climb onto the roof just to film a sunset. He caught Lucy staring. "What?" "Nothing," she muttered. "Just thinking." He gave a small shrug, the kind that ended conversations before they started, and disappeared up the stairs. The sound of his door clicking shut felt louder than the rain had the night before. That afternoon, Lucy tried to keep busy with homework, but found herself drifting toward his room more than once. The camera sat on her desk, its silver body dull in the sun. She hadn't dared watch more of it. Not yet. But each time she passed her doorway, the faint shine of it tugged at her. She carried it to the living room, meaning to return it, then stopped halfway down the hall. The television was on again, soft laughter filling the room. "You can leave it there, sweetheart," her mother called. "I'll make sure Daniel gets it later." Lucy hesitated. "He doesn't really film anymore." The older woman sighed. "He will. He just has a lot on his mind." A pause, then the familiar nurse's calm tone that tried to fix fatigue, with logic. "Teenagers go through moods. Give him space." Lucy nodded but didn't agree. The word mood seemed too small for what she'd seen on the screen. The way his voice had cracked like glass under pressure. She wanted to ask if her mother had noticed the long sleeves he wore again, even today, even in the unseasonable warmth, but the words stayed trapped in the polite corner of her throat. By evening, their house had settled into its quiet rhythm. Takeout containers on the counter, the hum of the refrigerator, the scrape of forks against plates. Daniel joined them late, his sketchbook under one arm. Lucy tried to peek at it while he set it aside, glimpsing only dark shapes at the page corners, lines that twisted inward until they vanished. "You used to draw people," she said softly. "I still do," he replied without smiling. "They just don't look the same anymore." Their mother tried to lighten the air. "You're still my artist." But when Daniel pushed his food around in silence, she sighed. "You're hardly eating lately. Everything okay at school?" He looked up, startled by the directness. "Fine." "Grades still fine? Friends?" "Yeah, Mom, it's fine." He stood abruptly, taking his plate to the sink. "Long day." The clink of ceramic sounded like a closing door. Lucy reached for her mother's hand across the table, but the woman only squeezed it once, a weary reassurance. "He'll come around." Upstairs, the boards creaked as Daniel crossed his room. Through the thin ceiling, Lucy heard him pacing, then the subtle scrape of furniture being moved. It was the same restlessness she'd heard in his recorded voice. The sound pressed against her ribs until she closed her book just to breathe. Later that night, when their mother had gone to bed, Lucy crept halfway up the stairs and stopped beneath his door. A thin line of light spilled across the carpet, then faded as if he'd heard her and turned off the lamp. The silence afterward was dense, but not empty, like something waiting. Over the following days, small patterns began to repeat. Daniel left earlier for school, sometimes skipping breakfast altogether. He spent evenings folding papers, sketching, or pretending to study, while Lucy did her best to orbit near him without making him suspicious. She brought him half a cookie once, leaving it beside his marker pens. Hours later, she found the plate empty. His quiet gesture of thanks left in the form of a tiny pencil drawing folded under it. A bird, mid-flight, drawn in 3 clean strokes. That small kindness filled her with both pride and dread. If he could still draw something that free, maybe he wasn't as lost as she feared. But when she peeked into his room the next morning and saw the sketch ripped into 4 neat squares in the trash, her hope faltered. On Sunday, while their mother worked overtime, the house became an echo chamber of ordinary sounds. The washing machine thudding downstairs, the tick of the hallway clock, the faint rhythm of Daniel's pencil above her room. Lucy sat cross-legged by the window, kneading her sleeves. She thought of the way he used to show her his little projects, how they'd take turns filming each other's silly puppet shows, laughing until their mother told them to quiet down. That camera still rested in her desk drawer now, the gatekeeper of the moment she wasn't supposed to see. Outside, the sun dropped low. Somewhere in the attic above, a box shifted. She listened hard but heard only the soft scrape of paper. Maybe he was drawing again. Maybe he was hiding. She couldn't tell the difference anymore. When their mother returned that night and dozed off on the couch, Lucy tiptoed upstairs to say goodnight to her brother. His door was open this time, and the lamplight spilled into the hall. He sat at his desk with his head in his hands, long sleeves pulled past his wrists. She whispered his name. He started, then forced a smile that reached only halfway. "Can I leave the light on?" she asked. "Sure," he murmured. "Don't stay up, okay?" "I won't." She lingered a moment longer, studying his bent shoulders, the gentle curve of fatigue in them. Then she retreated to her room, closing her door with care. She could still feel the camera's weight, even from across the room, like an unspoken question pressing on her chest. Downstairs, the refrigerator hummed and clicked. Somewhere in the walls, water rushed through old pipes. Lucy lay awake, counting each sound until sleep finally found her. When she dreamed, the red light blinked again, steady as a heartbeat, refusing to fade. Monday started with brittle light breaking through the kitchen curtains. Their mother's phone buzzed nonstop as she packed lunches, half listening to the morning news. Lucy sat at the table with cereal turning soggy, tracing her spoon through it while her brother stood by the counter, backpack half-zipped, eyes fixed somewhere beyond the window. "Eat something," their mother said without looking up. "You've got that science test today." "I'm not hungry," Daniel answered. That was nothing new, but there was something final in his voice this time. He tightened his grip on the strap, staring past the glass at their dew-coated yard. Tired of pretending at school. Their mother's head lifted faintly, but the phone rang again. "What?" "Nothing," he said quickly, and his voice shrank to almost nothing. "I'll be late." The door closed with a soft clap. For a few seconds, only the refrigerator hummed. Their mother sighed. "Teen years," she murmured, brushing crumbs into her hand. Then, spotting Lucy's look, she offered an automatic smile. "Don't worry, honey, he's fine." But Lucy's stomach stayed tight as she walked to school that day. Words lingered in her head like splinters. Tired of pretending, by afternoon the air had warmed. At home, sunlight angled across the hall in streaks so bright they made dust look like snow. When Lucy dropped her bag in her room, she noticed a scrap of paper near her brother's door, lined notebook paper, the edge torn jagged. She picked it up, ready to toss it in the bin, then froze. The writing was quick and dark, pressing through both sides. She read the words slowly, each one sinking deeper. Useless, weak, invisible. Below it, more tangled phrases. Why bother? They laugh anyway. Noise, they don't hear. Her chest went hollow. She folded the paper once, then again, and slipped it under her sweater. She didn't want her mother finding it. Didn't want Daniel to know she'd read it either. Her hands trembled as though the ink itself were sharp. The house was quiet until the clatter of the front door startled her. Daniel's footsteps thudded up the stairs. She ducked back into her room, heart racing, and watched through the half-open door as he passed. His face looked washed out, cheeks dulled by gray shadows. There was a faint bruise at his collarbone, an oblong blur half hidden by the shirt's folded edge. She almost called to him then, almost asked what happened. But his eyes looked emptied, so she said nothing. Only listened as his door clicked shut and the lock turned. Evening came heavy and slow. Their mother reheated leftover noodles, joking that she could run the house with one hand tied if bills didn't keep multiplying. Daniel appeared after they'd eaten, mumbling something about homework. He moved quietly, a careful choreography of staying unseen. Lucy followed at a distance, pretending to look for her slippers just so she could linger near his door. She heard paper rustling inside, then the faint scrape of a pencil. No music, no video games, only those long pauses that made every breath count. On Wednesday, the neighbor from across the street stopped by while Lucy's mother trimmed plants by the porch. Lucy crouched near the steps, chalking hopscotch squares on the sidewalk, but her ears pricked up when the neighbor said Daniel's name. "He used to laugh with the other kids," the woman said, voice lowered. "Now he just walks alone. My son says someone's been giving him trouble. Older boys, maybe. Oh, her mother replied, surprise flickering across her face before she masked it. He hasn't mentioned anything. He's quiet, but he'd tell me. The neighbor nodded politely, though doubt hung heavy in the air. When she left, Lucy stayed still, staring at the crooked chalk line until her mother went inside. The hopscotch numbers blurred when she wiped them with her hand. That night, the air thickened with warm rain again. Through her half-closed door, Lucy watched Daniel standing by the window in the hallway. The street lamp painted him in yellow light. He lifted the video camera from his desk, the same one she had found blinking days earlier, and pointed it not at her but at his own reflection in the glass. He didn't press record, just stared for a long time, face unreadable. She held her breath, afraid to disturb him. Her mind buzzed with questions. Was he filming again, or was the lens something else now? A mirror for whatever hurt he couldn't say aloud. By Friday, unease had become a constant hum inside her ribs. School felt blurrier, voices muffled. She forgot her spelling words twice and barely noticed. At lunch, she drew little camera icons in the margins of her notebook, tiny red dots blinking above them. Each one seemed to blink louder. After school, she found another torn sheet in the trash basket beside Daniel's desk while helping their mother collect laundry. The page smelled faintly of marker. Words sprawled diagonally, harsher than the first. They think I'm weird. I deserve it. Her mother called from the hall, asking if she'd found the missing sock, and Lucy stuffed the paper in her pocket. Not yet, she lied. The evening unfolded with quiet motions. Fork against plate, faucet running, the elastic tick of the wall clock. Daniel ate a little, excused himself early. Their mother exhaled into her glass of water. Maybe I'm pushing him too hard, she whispered. These teen years. Lucy didn't answer. What could she say? That school trouble sounded too soft a phrase for bruises that bloomed like shadows on skin. She squeezed her cup until it squeaked. Later, thunder grumbled far off. She sat on her bed with knees pulled up, watching the thin strip of light under Daniel's door. Every few minutes, a sound filtered through. Paper tearing, footsteps, quiet coughing. When she heard his chair scrape, she whispered through the crack, "Hey!" The noise inside stopped. A few seconds later, his voice answered, stretched and coarse. "What's up?" She hesitated. "Want tea? I can make some." "No, thanks." A pause. "Go to sleep, Lou." It wasn't unkind, but it carried the weight of a wall. She padded back to her room, spine prickling. The edges of the secret she'd stumbled into grew sharper each day. She thought of their mother's tired smile, of the papers hidden in her drawer, of the bruise she'd once seen when Daniel reached for a bowl too high on the shelf. The pieces didn't fit yet, but they all pointed in one direction she was afraid to name. When the rain finally started again, she stood by the window, watching drops race down the glass. Through her reflection, she could just make out the faintest glow from Daniel's room. The camera light flashing once, then dimming. In that single pulse, she saw it. His hurt, his silence. The proof that neither of them really knew how to fix it yet. She whispered to the dark, almost a promise. "I'll figure it out." Then, the light went out for good, leaving her reflection ghostly and small against the wet glass, waiting for morning. The following Saturday, stretched, slow and gray, their mother worked the early hospital shift, leaving before dawn, the soft click of the front door announcing hours of silence ahead. Lucy stayed in her pajamas longer than she should have, trailing from room to room, unsure what to do with all that quiet. Daniel's door was closed. It always was now. But when she leaned near, she heard neither music nor the scratch of his pencil, only a faint hum that might have been a whisper. A flicker of memory tugged at her. That first video, the crying, the way his shoulders had trembled in the dim attic light. She told herself she wouldn't open the camera again. That promise didn't hold. By mid-morning, she stood at his door, clutching the cool silver body of the camera. The battery light blinked red again, waiting. Her hand hovered near the knob, hesitating long enough for second thoughts to gather like dust. She pushed softly. His room breathed faint sunlight and stale air. The bed was unmade, clothes scattered across the floor, sketchbooks stacked like walls near the desk. It looked ordinary enough, but the camera had belonged here before she'd found it. Her heartbeat picked up as she crossed to the desk and unrolled the camera strap from her wrist. The little screen glowed once, flashing the familiar icons, folders, dates, small grainy thumbnails of still frames. She scrolled, thumb uncertain, barely breathing. Most clips were older ones, short, creative pieces from months ago. A stop-motion drawing, a fake commercial they'd once filmed for laughter. Then, mid-list, one file stood out. Rec 0407 Move, no title, just a timestamp from the week before. She hesitated, staring, then pressed play. Static bloomed into sound. The attic again, its angles sharp, floorboards visible in the fringe light from a single bulb. Daniel sat cross-legged beneath it, the same way she'd seen in the first video, but the camera now was closer, his face filling half the frame. He breathed out hard through his nose, trying to steady himself. "Okay," he muttered, almost scolding. "Just say it, right? Just say it." His voice cracked. He lifted his chin, meeting the lens. The look there startled her. It carried that mix of pleading and disbelief, people usually aimed at mirrors. "I don't know how to tell anyone." His hands flexed in his lap. When you get laughed at every day, it starts sounding normal. They call you names, push your stuff off your desk, and you think, maybe that's just how people are supposed to act." He rubbed his sleeve over his mouth. "Then you stop looking for anyone to talk to." Lucy's throat tightened. The attic background felt colder, even through the screen. Daniel's mouth twisted faintly. "They say I'm weird, quiet, like that's a crime. One teacher asked if I try hard enough to fit in. I didn't know what to say. Guess I don't fit anywhere good, huh?" A brittle laugh. He looked down, pulling the edge of his sleeve higher for a second, long enough for Lucy to glimpse the raw red lines near his wrist. She gasped so sharply that the sound seemed to echo through their small room. "Oh, Daniel," she whispered before remembering he couldn't hear. She pressed the camera closer, hoping somehow distance would shrink what she saw. "I just wanted them to stop," he said on screen. "Quieter now. Stop calling me what they call me. Stop pretending it's a joke. I thought maybe if I ignored it long enough it wouldn't matter. But it does. It always does." He drew a breath that shook unevenly. "You start to believe them. You stop drawing people because you don't belong in the world with them. You stop eating with anyone. You write notes you never want anyone to read." He stared at the lens again, eyes glassy. "And one day, it hits you that nobody's coming, that everyone's busy. So, you have to find a way to quiet it yourself." Lucy's hand shot to the pause button, but she couldn't press it. The room around her blurred. On the screen, Daniel wiped his face, leaving a faint smudge on his cheek. "If somebody finds this, it's not for drama," he said softly. "It's because I don't know any other way to stay real." His voice broke on real. "I just want to stop feeling like noise." The words filled every inch of her room. Even the rain outside seemed to hold its breath. Lucy backed into the edge of her bed and sat down hard, the camera clutched to her chest. She wanted to call him, just shout his name until he came running, laugh it off, turn it into one of those moments they would joke about someday. But the air stayed still. His door remained closed. A rustle above startled her. She realized the recording must have taken place only hours before she'd found it. The attic still held traces of his voice. She swallowed against the lump in her throat and pressed play again, unable to stop. Daniel kept speaking in halting bursts, as though wrestling with an unseen audience. "I know Mom works so hard. I know she'd tell me it's temporary, but she can't fix this. None of it. I see her exhausted every night, and I think she doesn't need one more broken thing to worry about." He gave another dry laugh that sounded more like a sob. "Guess I'm good at keeping secrets." Then silence. Longer this time. The camera clicked as the focus shifted. He was staring past the lens now, into empty space. When he finally spoke again, it was almost a whisper. "If I disappear, it's no one's fault. Tell Lou she's going to be fine. She's brave even when she's scared. Lucy jolted upright. That name, her nickname, left his lips like a farewell. She fumbled the controls, heart hammering, but the file ended abruptly. The screen went black. Her face reflected faintly in it, pale, frightened, 8 years old, but carrying something far too heavy. She lowered the camera and pressed her palms over her eyes. For a long time, she sat without moving, mind skittering between disbelief and panic. Her first thought was to run downstairs, call her mother, call someone. The next thought stopped her cold. If he found out she'd watched, what would he do? The idea of breaking his trust hurt almost as much as what she'd heard. Tears came fast, no sound with them. She rocked slightly, the motion instinctive, trying to soothe herself as he had done in the video. After a few minutes, she opened her closet and set the camera carefully on the top shelf beside an old stuffed panda. She slid the door closed as though hiding a wounded animal that needed dark to heal. The rest of the day flowed past in fragments. Daniel moving quietly through the hallway, his cautious hey when she crossed paths with him near the stairs. Her own nod too stiff to be casual. He noticed nothing different in her except, perhaps, the softness of her voice when she answered. Twice she almost blurted everything, once when he poured juice, once when he reached to pick up the mail. But fear coiled tighter each time. What if speaking made things worse? By evening, their mother was home, bustling through chores. Daniel retreated to his room. Lucy helped set the table, careful to breathe evenly. The world had not changed for anyone else, only recoiled inside her, one secret spinning behind glass. When bedtime came, she lingered in the hallway. Pale light from his desk lamp spilled under his door. She pressed her ear close. Faint music this time, soft, wordless, almost kind. For a heartbeat, she convinced herself he might be okay. Then she heard a sniff, the chair creak, and silence again. She tiptoed back to her own room and stared at the closet door until her vision blurred. The camera waited behind it, still holding his voice, his confessions, his danger. It felt alive, breathing through the wood. Her mind raced. Should she destroy it? Show it to Mom? Leave it alone? Each option carried its own terror. Finally, she whispered into the dim room as though the camera could hear. "I'll find a way, Daniel. I promise." Then she switched off her lamp. The darkness settled softly through the house, carrying his last words with it. Words she would never unhear. Words that had quietly shifted everything she knew about love, about fear, about how a promise could hurt more than a lie. Sleep came late, heavy and restless. Upstairs, rain began again, tapping the roof in the same slow rhythm that once marked the start of his confessions. Somewhere beyond that sound, her brother turned in bed, alive, unaware that downstairs his little sister kept watch with a secret too big for both of them. The morning after she found the recording, Lucy woke before her alarm. The house felt lighter in temperature but heavier in air, as though the night had kept its breath. She went downstairs, the boards faintly cold under her feet, and pulled out bread, jam, and the small jar of honey Daniel liked. She worked slowly, trying to spread it evenly so it looked neat, not messy like her usual sandwiches. When Daniel appeared, hoodie half-zipped, eyes focused somewhere past her shoulder, she pushed the plate toward him. "I made this for you," she said softly. He blinked, surprised. "You didn't have to." "I know," she nudged it closer. "But it's better than nothing." He picked it up, took a small bite, then gave a thin smile. "Thanks." The word came out automatic, like muscle memory. Lucy nodded, trying to seem casual. Her heart thundered. The act felt tiny, but she clung to it. An offering. A thread he might follow back to the surface. By late afternoon, she wrote a note in her best printing. "You're good at making things look nice. Don't stop." She folded it small and slipped it through the crack under his door. A few hours later, it was gone. No comment, but when he came down for dinner, he asked about her day. Only one question, yet it felt like proof of something warming between them. Their mother's energy stayed frayed. Extra shifts at the hospital, bills piled on the counter, the usual sighs over cold coffee. Lucy thought about telling her then, blurting out everything but remembered the night she'd overheard her crying quietly in the kitchen. She couldn't add more weight to those shoulders. Instead, she carried it herself. Each day she'd try another small kindness, reheating leftovers for him, arranging his sketch pencils, leaving small doodles with tiny hearts on his textbooks. Sometimes he smirked. Sometimes he pretended not to notice. When moods darkened again, she'd cling to the moments he almost laughed. By the second week, the quiet between them had changed texture. It wasn't empty anymore. It buzzed faintly, like air before a storm. One evening, he came home late, wet sleeves clinging, shoes muddy. Their mother was asleep on the couch. Lucy met him at the door with a towel. "You okay?" "Just fell." He stepped past her, avoiding her eyes. The sound of dripping water followed him up the stairs. When the bathroom door closed, she sat on the bottom step, towel still folded in her hands. Something in her chest ached, the helpless kind of ache that waits for permission to turn into fear. Over dinner the next night, Daniel picked at his food again. "Not hungry," he murmured. "You should eat while it's warm," their mother said without looking up from her paperwork. "You're all bones these days." "I'm fine." Her tone softened anyway, as if she believed that word would eventually make itself true. "Big test tomorrow?" He nodded, shifting. His sleeves tugged down when he raised his glass, revealing just for an instant a faint reddish mark along his wrist. The light caught it, gone before Lucy could breathe. Her stomach twisted. She wanted to slam her hand on the table, to shout look, but their mother's tired eyes met hers across the plates, wordlessly asking for quiet. So she swallowed the truth again. Later, in her room, Lucy stared at the glow-in-the-dark stars on her ceiling. The promise he'd muttered in that recording, how Mom didn't need one more broken thing, looped endlessly. If she told, he might see it as betrayal. If she stayed silent, maybe he'd vanish before morning. Each outcome felt wrong. She remembered how, when she was smaller, Daniel had promised never to tell when she spilled paint on Mom's favorite tablecloth. They'd scrubbed for an hour, laughing until their arms ached. Back then, secrets had meant safety, loyalty. Now, keeping one felt like poison. After midnight, she padded into the hallway. The carpet muted her steps as she stopped by his door. A line of light glowed under it. She whispered, "You awake?" No answer. She eased closer, pressing her ear against the wood. She could hear his pencil moving, scratch, pause, scratch again. She pictured him bent over another bleak drawing, maybe adding those words she'd found scrawled on crumpled paper. She wanted to knock, say, "Please stop hurting yourself." But her throat wouldn't give her permission. She went back to bed and cried into her pillow, silent and small. By Sunday, she tried something different. She rummaged through the kitchen drawers until she found an old, sticky notepad shaped like stars. On each one, she wrote a tiny message. "I see you. You're not nothing. Still my favorite person." She stuck them along the hallway wall leading to his door, a quiet constellation toward safety. Then she fled downstairs before he could wake. When she returned that evening, the notes were gone. She panicked at first, thinking he'd thrown them away until she peeked into his room while he was in the shower. They were all tucked on his desk corner, edges carefully aligned. Her knees almost gave out from relief. The following night, while helping her mother fold laundry, she shook out one of Daniel's hoodies and froze. Near the cuff, specks of brownish red dotted the fabric, faded but unmistakable. Her hands began to shake. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" her mother asked behind her, half distracted. Lucy swallowed hard, twisting the fabric quickly so the stains disappeared. "Nothing, just tired." Her mother nodded, not seeing the tremor. "You can head to bed if you want." When her mother left the room, Lucy laid the hoodie flat again. The marks spread like tiny maps of disaster. She pressed her thumb over them as though she could erase them with warmth. That night, she couldn't eat, couldn't focus on her homework. She sat on the floor beside her bed, papers scattered, whispering prayers she didn't quite remember from church. If someone was listening, she wanted them to stay near him, keep him breathing, keep him from reaching that edge again. At some point, she opened her drawer and took out the camera. It stayed dark, battery flat. yet she cradled it anyway. "You kept his secret," she told it softly. "Now you're mine." She set it on her knees, thinking of that attic light trembling, of how his voice had cracked around certain words. The memory pulsed behind her ribs. She considered finding the courage to tell. Maybe tonight. Maybe tomorrow. If tomorrow still existed the way normal days were supposed to. The clock downstairs chimed 10. She returned the camera, slow and careful, then stood in the hallway, staring at his closed door. Inside came faint movement, a drawer shutting, the rustle of paper. He was there, still alive. Her fear hardened into resolve. She would keep trying until he let them help. Small steps, steady ones. If love was a kind of patience, she would learn it. Before bed, she wrote 4 words on a sticky note and pressed it against his door. "We need the truth." The next morning it was gone. She didn't find it in the trash, didn't see it on his desk, but later, when he passed her in the hall, he met her eyes for the first time in days. There was something raw in that look, half apology, half surrender. Then he whispered, barely audible, "Soon." The word rang through her all day like a chord held on a piano, trembling but clear. By evening, her resolve no longer felt like hope. It felt like armor. She couldn't wait for soon. She needed now. And though she was only 8, she understood something adults often forgot. Silence saves no one. Dinner that evening started quietly enough. The air smelled faintly of reheated stew, the kind their mother made in big batches to stretch through the week. Rain had begun again, pattering steadier now, as if the sky itself understood tension was building. Daniel sat across from Lucy. Hood up, though the house was warm. Their mother tried casual conversation. Questions about school, shifts, bills, until the phone rang. She left to answer in the next room, her voice muffled through static. That left the two of them alone at the table. The lamp above flickered once, yellow light skating across Daniel's pale skin. Lucy's fork slipped from her fingers, clattering against the bowl. He looked up, startled. "You okay?" She nodded, forcing a smile. "Clumsy." In truth, her whole body buzzed like a tuning fork waiting to snap. She'd spent all day replaying the word he'd whispered that morning, soon. It wasn't a promise. It was a deadline. When their mother returned, her expression had changed. "That was the school," she said, smoothing her hair, as if to steady her tone. "They said you've missed 3 days this month without explanation." Daniel stiffened. "They must have messed up attendance." "Don't lie." Her voice sharpened. "I just want to understand what's happening. Teachers say you're falling behind, skipping lunch, keeping to yourself. Do you want to talk about it?" "There's nothing to talk about," he replied, too quickly. Lucy felt the air thicken like closing curtains. Her mother folded her arms. "You can't keep shutting us out." "I'm not shutting anyone out," he snapped. He stopped, knuckles whitening around his fork. "Forget it." "Daniel," she tried again, but he pushed his chair back. The scrape rang like thunder in the small room. "I said forget it!" He stormed upstairs, steps pounding like heartbeats. The door slammed. Silence fell heavy enough to make Lucy's eyes sting. Their mother sighed, rubbing her temples. "Maybe I should have..." She shook her head halfway through the thought. "He'll calm down. Let him be a minute." Lucy sat frozen, eyes on the staircase. Every nerve in her told her not to wait. Her feet moved before her thoughts caught up. She climbed, careful not to let the stairs creak. At the top, faint sounds filtered through the hallway. The low murmur of a voice, the click of a button she knew too well. Her chest tightened. The camera. She followed the sound to the attic door. The smell of dust and rain met her. Through a narrow gap, she saw Daniel sitting on the floor. The small tripod before him, the red record light glowing steady like a wound. He spoke softly, as if confessing to the lens again. "I'm tired, that's all. I just want the noise to stop." Her breath hitched. He rubbed his eyes. "They don't need to see me like this. I'll leave something easy to clean up. Mom's already drowning in work." Something in Lucy broke open. She pushed the door, and its imperfect latch gave way with a soft groan. The red light fell on her face. "Daniel." Her voice quivered but carried. He flinched so hard the camera wobbled. "Lucy, what are you doing? Get out!" She stepped inside, small feet sinking into the old rug. "I saw the first video." His jaw locked. For a second he looked at her like a stranger intruding on sacred ground. Then his voice rose, cracking. "You had no right." "I know," she whispered, tears already stabbing her throat. "But I was scared. You were crying. I didn't know what to do." He stood abruptly, knocking into the tripod. The camera toppled sideways, filming their feet now, that unsteady red blinking across the boards. "You don't understand anything, Lucy. I understand you're hurting." The words stopped him like a wall. He turned away, shoulders tight. "You shouldn't have seen that." "I wish I hadn't. But I did. And now, I can't stop thinking about it." He let out a laugh, short and bitter. "Great. Now you can worry too." "I already was," she said. When he didn't answer, she took another small step forward. "You always told me not to keep secrets that make me sad. Remember when I broke Mom's vase? You said secrets grow teeth." His breath caught, a sound more like a sob. "This isn't a broken vase, Lou. This is me. Broken doesn't even start to cover it." She reached toward him, voice gentler now. "That's why we have to tell Mom. Together. She can what?" He interrupted, spinning toward her. His eyes were soaked red again, glistening under the single bulb. "Fix me between shifts. Pay another bill I've messed up with bad grades. You think she needs to add me to her list?" "She needs you on any list that keeps you here." His mouth trembled, words fighting to come out but turning into air. The faint sound of rain thickened above them, drumming on the old roof like clapping hands. Lucy felt her knees wobble. She was 8, too small for words like depression or collapse, but something stronger than vocabulary made her inch closer. "I can't lose you," she said simply. That broke him open. His face twisted, his voice failed. "You're not losing anyone," he muttered, but the conviction was gone. "You already started to leave," she said. He sank down onto the rug, elbows braced on his knees. It wasn't surrender at first, just exhaustion pretending to be calm. She sat opposite him, folding herself small. The camera lay on its side between them, still recording, catching drops of their voices like evidence. Lucy stared at the blinking red light. "Maybe it's good," she whispered. "This camera, it remembered for you when you couldn't say it out loud." He shook his head slowly. "It's just proof I couldn't handle life. It's proof you asked for help, even if you didn't mean to." He looked up at her then, really looked. The space between them filled with something raw and trembling, the first fragile thread of understanding. A long pause stretched before he whispered, "I don't want Mom to see me like that." "She's already seen you sad," Lucy said. "She just doesn't know how much. Let her know. Let her try." He rubbed his palms together, the skin faintly scarred. "She'll fall apart." "Maybe," Lucy admitted. "But it's better than pretending nothing's broken while it breaks more." Daniel pressed his forehead to his knees, breathing tight. "How did you even get this brave?" "I'm not brave," she said softly. "I'm scared. That's how I know it matters." The attic's single bulb flickered. Somewhere below, a cupboard door slammed. Their mother moving through the kitchen, life carrying on. Rainlight shimmered in small patches over Daniel's shoulders. Finally he whispered, "If we tell her, everything changes." "It already changed," she said, "when you hit record." Her words landed gently and stayed there. After a long minute, he reached over, turning the camera upright again. For the first time, they sat side by side in its frame. His voice came quiet but steady. "Then we tell her together." Lucy nodded, blinking fast to keep her focus. "Together." He stopped the recording. The little light faded to black. For a beat, neither moved. The attic smelled of dust and rain, the air heavy, but somehow clearer now. When he stood, she took his hand automatically, like she used to when crossing streets. They climbed down the stairs, slowly, The floor creaked. Their joined footsteps sounded uneven, but in sync. In the living room, their mother sat surrounded by bills and folders. When she looked up and saw them, her eyebrows knit. "Everything okay up there?" Daniel swallowed. His voice trembled. "Not really." Lucy squeezed his hand once before letting go. He set the camera on the table, its black lens pointed up like an open eye. "There's something you should see," Lucy said, barely audible. Their mother's gaze darted between them, understanding dawning in microseconds. Fear and love mixing all at once. "What did you find?" Daniel's answer came as a shaky whisper. "Me." The room went still except for the soft patter of rain against the window pane. "For once," he said, "I want you to know the truth before it's too late." When their mother rose, the folder slipped from her lap. Paper scattered across the floor like snow forgotten. She crossed the room, hands trembling, eyes wide with question and relief and pain. Lucy stepped back, letting light from the hallway spill over them. The camera waited on the table, silent but charged, holding the story both of them had carried too long. No one spoke for several heartbeats. Then their mother reached for her son, hesitant at first, then fierce. He didn't pull away. Lucy watched the scene through wet eyes, the still frame of love reassembling itself in real time. She could almost hear the camera's phantom click, capturing the moment that changed the weight of their silence forever. The house felt quieter than Lucy had ever known it. Rain had stopped sometime during the night, leaving the air damp but still. Downstairs, a single lamp cast an amber circle across the living room rug. Their mother sat at the table, surrounded by open paperwork, her brow drawn in concentration. When Lucy and Daniel reached the bottom of the stairs, she looked up, one pen held against her cheek. "You too," she said softly. "It's late." Daniel swallowed hard. "Mom, can we talk?" Something in his tone made her drop the pen. "Of course. What's going on?" Lucy stepped forward, both hands cupped around the camera. She placed it carefully on the edge of the table. We need you to see something," she whispered. Their mother's eyes flicked between them. "What is it?" Daniel drew a breath that sounded painful. "It's me." He pressed the power button. The small screen lit up, reflecting his face in miniature. Then the video began to play. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the whir of the tiny speaker. Then, from the device, came his recorded voice, shaky, exhausted, reaching for words he'd hidden too long. "I don't know how to tell anyone," the voice said. Their mother froze. Her gaze moved, slowly, from the table to her son. The video continued. Snippets of confession, fragments of anger and weariness, the quiet plea Lucy had already memorized. Daniel's recorded sobs filled the silence between thunder and breath. "Stop it," their mother whispered. "Please stop, Ernie." But Daniel shook his head. "No, you need to hear all of it." Lucy stood close enough to hear her mother's breathing quicken, each exhale unsteady. When the voice on the camera said, "I wish I could stop feeling like noise," tears slid down the woman's cheeks. She covered her mouth with one hand as if trying to hold something inside. The recording ended in a tiny click. No one moved. For a heartbeat, Lucy could hear the clock ticking above the couch. Then their mother reached for Daniel, her hands trembling. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, voice breaking halfway between anger and grief. "How long have you been feeling this way?" "I didn't want to make things worse," he managed. His shoulders sagged. "You work so much. I thought you'd—" He stopped, breath shuddering. "You already have enough to worry about." Her hands tightened around his arms, thumb pressing against fabric until she found the faint ridge of an old cut. "Worrying about you isn't a burden," she said through tears. "Losing you would be." She drew him into her chest before he could resist. "You're never too much for me. Never." Lucy stood still, watching them fold toward each other. The hug looked awkward at first, shoulder against chin, height mismatched. But something softened inside it. For the first time in months, Daniel's body stopped holding itself rigid. He let out a single sob that seemed to come from somewhere far beneath words. Their mother held on, murmuring fragments of comfort between gasps. "It's okay," she said, again and again, though they both knew it wasn't. Not yet. Lucy edged closer and felt an arm reach out, pulling her in too. The three of them stood locked together, the sound of their breathing messy but alive. The papers on the table fluttered as the air shifted, forgotten for the first time all week. When their mother finally let go, she wiped her face on her sleeve and looked between them. "We're going to get help, okay? Real help. Tomorrow morning. First thing." Daniel shook his head automatically. "Therapy costs too much." "I don't care about that." Her tone steadied. "There are clinics, programs. I'll make the calls. You don't have to handle this alone anymore." He stared at the floor. "I don't even know what to say to anyone." She brushed his hair from his eyes, a gesture so gentle it almost undid Lucy. "Start with what you said on that camera. Start there." He nodded, barely. Then his gaze flicked to his sister. "You shouldn't have had to carry that alone." Lucy's throat tightened. "I didn't know what else to do. I just wanted you to still be here." He reached out, resting his hand on her shoulder. "I am, because of you." The words felt heavier than any praise she'd ever received. She looked down at the small red mark the camera light had left on her palm, half expecting it to vanish now that the secret was out. Their mother sat slowly, exhaustion settling back over her face, though her eyes burned brighter than before. "I kept missing it," she murmured. "All the signs. I thought giving you space was helping you grow up." She looked up again, fierce in her tenderness. "From now on, no more guessing games. We talk, even when it's hard." Daniel gave a fragile smile. "Okay." Outside, a car hissed past on the wet pavement. Streetlight spread through the curtains, washing the room in dull silver. For once, the reflection in the window showed not emptiness, but the outline of three people close together. Their mother reached for the phone, hesitated. "It's late, but I can call our doctor on duty tonight, just to ask what steps to take." "I can wait until morning," Daniel said quickly, though his voice wavered. "I'm just tired, that's all." "We'll go first thing," she repeated, half to herself. "Promise me you'll sleep in my room tonight." He opened his mouth to protest, then stopped when he saw the look on her face. "Okay," he said quietly. Lucy helped gather the fallen papers while they spoke. One envelope had absorbed a tear stain, the ink blurring. She stacked everything neatly. The small camera sat atop the pile like a witness who had finally done its job. When Daniel followed their mother down the hall, he paused at the doorway and looked back. "Thank you, Lou." She gave a tiny shrug, eyes raw. "For what?" "For not deleting it." After their doors shut, the house exhaled. Rain began again, gentle against the windows. Lucy sat at the table, staring at the camera's blank screen until she was sure it no longer frightened her. It was just an object now, plastic, glass, battery. The real story lived in the voices upstairs. A faint light spilled from her mother's room, where quiet words still traded through the door. Promises, plans, the fragile beginnings of help. Lucy listened until her own eyelids grew too heavy. She moved the camera to the bookshelf, away from sight, then climbed onto the couch and curled beneath an Afghan that smelled faintly of detergent. Sleep tugged at her. Through the blur, she pictured hospital hallways and kind-eyed doctors, places that might help her brother breathe again. She didn't know what therapy meant exactly, or how long any of this would take, but she knew what it felt like to choose life over silence. That would be enough for now. As her eyes closed, their mother's voice carried faintly down the hall. "We'll get through this. All of us." Lucy believed her. For the first time in weeks, she let herself. Sunlight slanted through the kitchen blinds, painting quiet stripes across the counter. Weeks had passed since the night the truth spilled from the camera. The house didn't feel lighter yet, more like a bandaged limb, tender but healing. Lucy sat at the table, peeling an orange, while her brother sorted mail beside her. Their mother moved through the kitchen with slower steps now, deliberate ones. "How's the hand?" she asked Daniel softly. He lifted his sleeve just enough to show faint pink marks fading to skin color. "Better," he said. "Doctor says I'm good to draw again." Lucy smiled. "You never stopped." He glanced down, embarrassed but amused. "Didn't know you noticed." She tossed a bit of orange peel at him. "I notice everything." That was mostly true. She noticed the new sound in the house. Voices, gentle and ordinary, instead of brittle silence. She noticed Daniel waking earlier, joining breakfast, even when he only ate half a bagel. She noticed their mother humming again, sometimes out of tune, but always on purpose. On Mondays and Wednesdays, Daniel met with a counselor across town. Lucy waited in the lobby, legs too short for the chair, reading picture books she had long outgrown. The receptionist always smiled at her. "You're a champ, waiting that long," she'd say. Lucy just shrugged. Sitting quietly felt like the smallest gift she could offer. When sessions ended, Daniel emerged carrying a cup of water, face pale but peaceful. He rarely spoke about what was said inside that room. Still, Lucy could tell. His shoulders carried less weight each time. Once, on the drive home, their mother asked, "Did it help today?" He looked out the window. "I think so. He listens. Doesn't talk too much." "That can be the best kind," she said. Lucy held her hands together in her lap, listening to the quiet thrum of tires. The world outside moved differently now. Same streets, same stores, yet everything tinted with gentler light. At home, the video camera sat in a drawer under Daniel's desk. Its battery had been charged, but no one touched it for weeks. It wasn't forbidden. It just wasn't needed yet. Every once in a while, Lucy thought she heard its memory humming, but maybe that was just her imagination. Evenings looked different too. Dinner happened around the same table, but laughter sometimes breezed through the conversation now. Their mother still came home tired, still carried the smell of disinfectant on her uniform, yet she stayed longer at the table. Sometimes she even brought stories from the hospital. Funny patients, clumsy doctors. Daniel smiled at the smallest ones, which was enough. On a Thursday night, Lucy found him by the window, sketchbook open, pencil moving in slow, sure lines. She stood in the doorway. "What are you drawing?" He turned the page toward her. A field of small shapes, each becoming clearer the closer she looked. Birds in flight above rooftops. "They look free," she whispered. "That's the point. Can you teach me?" He tapped the pencil against the paper. "You'll just get bored halfway. Try me." So he did. They sat cross-legged on the rug, one pencil between them, tracing lines that never quite matched but fit together anyway. When their mother peeked in, she didn't speak, just watched long enough to let the sight sink in before stepping quietly away. By Sunday, Lucy realized mornings didn't scare her anymore. No more dread waiting at the top of the stairs. Only the regular rhythm of a home learning to breathe again. Still, she checked on him. Every night, the same small ritual. Pause outside his door, listen for the scratch of pencil or soft music, whisper a quick goodnight even if he didn't answer. Some nights he whispered back. That tiny exchange was her anchor. The first time their mother mentioned therapy for the whole family, Daniel blushed. "All of us?" "Talking helps everyone," she said. "Not just you." Lucy pretended to scowl. "Even me?" "Especially you," her mother replied. The sessions were awkward at first. A softly smiling woman with a notepad asked about feelings Lucy couldn't always name. Still, each visit made the air at home a little easier to breathe. Daniel even cracked a joke once, something about the therapist's endless supply of tissues, and their mother laughed so hard she wiped her eyes. One afternoon, as rain returned after a long dry spell, Lucy sat by the window with the camera in her lap. She had taken it from the drawer without quite deciding to. The surface felt cool, unthreatening. Through its small viewfinder, the kitchen came into frame, Daniel rinsing dishes, their mother humming by the stove. Lucy didn't press record. She just watched, framing an image that looked so ordinary it felt holy. Light glinted off the sink, water rushed, and laughter folded into the steam. Daniel caught her watching. You filming again? Maybe, she said. He smiled, no shadow in it this time. Good. Somebody should remember the good parts. That night she dreamed of sunlight instead of rain, their house washed in gold. In the dream, Daniel stood by the window, camera balanced in his hands, aiming not at his own reflection, but toward the open street. The next morning, she woke early, energized by something she couldn't name. She found fresh sketch pages laid neatly on the kitchen table, Daniel's handwriting in the corner. For Lou, practice feathers. Attached to it, a small yellow sticky note. Thanks for staying. The compliment made her laugh under her breath. Her mother poured coffee, catching sight of her smile. What's funny? Just, things are less heavy today. Her mother set down her mug and brushed a crumb from Lucy's cheek. That's how healing feels. It doesn't shout. It just breathes quieter. After breakfast, Daniel left for school, backpack lighter than it used to be. The aunt's front door clicked gently behind him. Lucy watched him through the window until he vanished around the corner, sunlight breaking along his shoulders. That evening, when they all gathered for dinner, rain began again. Soft, rhythmic, familiar. But this time, no one looked uneasy. The sound only filled the room around them, blending with the low hum of conversation. Lucy reached across the table for an extra spoon. Daniel passed it before she asked. Mom? She said, glancing between them. Can I use the camera again? Her mother paused mid-bite, then nodded slowly. If you want. Just be careful with it. Daniel raised an eyebrow. New project? Sort of, she answered. I think I want to see how light moves through our house, he smiled. That sounds like something worth recording. Later that night, when everyone had gone to bed, Lucy set up the camera by her window. She pressed record, but didn't speak to it. The lens captured faint streetlight, drifting clouds, the promise of sunrise. She wanted it to remember this, how quiet could mean peace now, not danger. She whispered only once before turning off the light. See? We made it through. The red recording dot blinked 3 times, steady as a heartbeat, and then went dark. Morning light pooled across Lucy's desk, catching the edge of the silver camera she had left there the night before. She brushed her fingers over its surface, startled by how different it felt now. No longer a secret, just a tool waiting to be used. She turned it in her hands, found the small lens smudged from fingerprints, and polished it with the edge of her sleeve. The glass shone again, reflecting her face. 8 years old, hair crooked, eyes curious. Whole, by breakfast, she'd made up her mind. Can I start filming again? She asked. Her mother sipped coffee and smiled over the rim. As long as you're kind to your subjects. Daniel grinned faintly, sliding toast onto her plate. She's basically a reporter. Lucy held up the camera, more like a memory collector. Later that morning, the house filled with small sounds. The kettle, the creak of a chair, the shuffle of mail. She wandered from room to room, pressing record and narrating softly. This is sunshine after the rain, she said, as light spilled through the blinds. The camera caught Daniel's reflection in the window, bent over his sketchbook. And this, she whispered, is what healing looks like. He looked up, smiling without self-consciousness. You make everything sound poetic. I'm just telling the truth. You're learning young, he said. Afternoons had become their gentlest hours. School still brought stress for Daniel, small waves of awkwardness that came and went, but Lucy's presence grounded him. Sometimes they walked the quiet streets together, camera hanging around her neck, recording snippets of normal life. The rustle of trees, a barking dog, laughter from the next block. Daniel said it helped to see that the world could look ordinary again. One evening she found her mother at the sink, washing dishes. Steam fogged the window. Lucy turned the camera on and aimed it at the cascade of foam. What are you filming? Her mother asked, laugh tucked inside the question. Just how you make the plates clean. It's like a small bit of magic. Oh, honey, her mother said, shaking her head. If dish soap counts as magic, we're set for life. But she smiled at the attention, and Lucy recorded that too, the slow return of her mother's warmth. Daniel began drawing again for real, not just shapes, but full scenes, fields, faces, the occasional self-portrait. One afternoon, he showed Lucy a new sketch of their backyard. "See that shadow?" he asked, tapping the paper. "It's where I used to sit when things felt too loud at school. Now I draw it instead." Lucy tilted the camera toward him. "Can I keep that on film?" she asked quietly. He nodded. "Yeah, go ahead." Her recordings turned into a gentle project, a mosaic of small safety signals, morning coffee steam, pencil scratches, murmured jokes. She edited them together on her mother's old laptop, scrolling through stills late at night with a sense of pride she didn't have words for. The finished piece she titled Our Quiet Day. It ran only 4 minutes. They watched it together on the couch. First came scenes of sunlight flickering through curtains, then Daniel sketching, and finally the three of them laughing during dinner over uneven pancakes. Her voice narrated softly. Love doesn't always speak loud. Sometimes it just keeps showing up. When the screen went dark, nobody spoke for a while. Then her mother reached across to touch Lucy's hair. "That was beautiful," she said. Daniel wiped his eyes with his sleeve. "You made us look gentle again." "We are," Lucy said simply. Days turned into weeks. Daniel's therapy sessions grew less tense. He began writing letters to the students who had hurt him, to teachers who hadn't noticed, even one to his past self. He never mailed most of them, but said the writing unknotted his chest. Some afternoons he read them aloud to Lucy in pieces. "I'm not sending blame," he explained, "just letting the words go where they belong." She filmed those letters in fragments, his hand folding paper, the tilt of his jaw, the quiet click of pen caps. His voice over the soft, mechanical noises reminded her that honesty could sound brave, not broken. One day he joined a small support group at the library. He returned afterward quieter but steadier. "It's strange," he told her, "hearing other people tell stories that rhyme with mine." She nodded, recording his reflection as he spoke. "It's not the same pain, but it feels like a family you didn't know existed." She added his words to her next montage. Family you didn't know existed," she repeated into the camera microphone, liking how the phrase shimmered. Their mother watched all this with cautious wonder, both hands often wrapped around a mug as if to hold the warmth there. She started humming while folding laundry. No particular tune, just rhythm. Lucy recorded it from the staircase, zooming in on her mother's half smile. The sound filled the house, like gentle proof. At dinner, they sometimes replayed Lucy's short films on the small television. The brightness flickered against their faces. Daniel teased her about shaky camera angles. She teased him about overused metaphors in his journal. Their mother told them she'd never seen either of them smile so much on screen. "It's my favorite show," she joked, "and it's always new episodes." Later, Lucy filmed other small marvels. The shimmer of cereal milk in morning sun, Daniel adjusting the blinds, the reflection of 3 toothbrushes, side by side. She added soft narration. "Courage isn't loud. It's choosing light even when you remember the dark." Daniel overheard that line and squeezed her hand afterward. "You're good at this," he said. "Better than you think." A few days later, he brought home a certificate from his counselor, something about progress goals met. He left it on the counter with a note. "Still working, but getting there." Lucy recorded him pinning it to the fridge, where once overdue bills had hung. Her mother laughed quietly. "That's a better decoration." That weekend, Lucy uploaded Our Quiet Day to a private folder online. Daniel hovered behind her, curious but supportive. "Maybe someday we could show people what getting better actually looks like," she said. "Maybe," he agreed. "When we're ready." Through the living room window, the sky poured honey-colored light onto the table. Lucy lifted the camera, focused on that glow, then on the 2 people framed within it, the brother sketching, the mother humming softly. She whispered to the lens, This is everything I wanted to remember. Dinner that night felt easy again. No forced conversation, just laughter over too salty soup. The red glow of sunset spilled across Daniel's face as he teased their mom about cooking salt instead of soup salt. Lucy caught it all in one effortless pan of her camera, the light steady, unafraid. When the dishes were done, she took the camera upstairs and placed it gently on her desk. The red light blinked until she pressed the button. Recording stopped. She stared at her reflection in the still lens, then whispered, "You only ever had to see." The house around her hushed into night music, rain far away, drawers closing, a bed creaking. She climbed under her blanket, warmth creeping up behind her eyelids. Just before sleep took her, she dreamed again of the fluttering birds from Daniel's sketchbook, wings open, tracing new flight paths through a sky that finally stayed blue. The classroom buzzed with the soft shuffle of chairs and paper. Lucy sat in the front row, small hands folded around a note card nearly worn through the corners. The bright poster above the board read, "Someone who changed my life." Her stomach fluttered with the weight of those words. Her teacher smiled warmly. "Who'd like to go next?" Lucy raised her hand before nerves could stop her. A few classmates turned, surprised. She stood, her shoes squeaking faintly on the polished floor as she walked toward the front. The note card trembled in her grip, but her voice, when it came, was light and clear. "The person who changed my life is my brother, Daniel." The room stilled. A pencil rolled to the floor, somewhere in the back, unnoticed. "He taught me that courage isn't always loud," she continued. "Sometimes it's the quiet kind, the kind that tells the truth, even when it hurts, or asks for help, even when you're scared." She looked at her note card but didn't read from it. "There was a time when my brother felt really lost, but he found a way to say how bad things were, and that made all of us braver. It showed me that secrets can hurt more than words ever could." Her teacher's eyes softened. A few kids leaned forward, listening as if the world had narrowed to her small voice. "When I didn't know what courage meant," Lucy said, "I thought it was jumping off high things or standing up to bullies. Now I think it means being honest, even if your voice shakes." She smiled faintly. "It's also love. Love that stays." She nodded once as if confirming it to herself. "So, my brother changed my life because he stayed, and now I want to be like that for other people. Someone who stays." The room broke into applause, gentle at first, then stronger, joined by a few cheers. Color rose in her cheeks. She ducked her head in thanks and walked back to her seat, heart thudding like a soft drumbeat of relief. Her teacher dabbed at her eyes. "Beautiful work, Lucy," she said. "You showed us something true." By the door, Daniel stood half hidden among the parents who had come to watch the class presentations. He wore a dark jacket, sleeves rolled neatly, hair freshly cut. When Lucy looked up and spotted him, her grin broke wide across her face. After class, he waited by the window. The hallway smelled faintly of crayons and lunch rolls. She ran to him, words bubbling. "You came. I wouldn't miss it," he said, smiling. "You were amazing." She shrugged, suddenly shy. "I was scared." "That's how you know you did it right." He crouched, so they were eye level. "You said all that about me?" "Yeah." Her voice sank to a whisper. "You don't mind?" He shook his head. "No, it's good. I didn't realize I could be someone's reason for courage." "You still are." She reached into her backpack and pulled out a folded paper. "Here, I wrote this part but didn't read it." He opened it carefully. Inside, in her round handwriting, were 5 words. "You're still my favorite person." He swallowed hard, smiling through the lump in his throat. "That's mutual," he said softly. They walked out together into late afternoon light. The air smelled like chalk dust and spring flowers. Children spilled from other classrooms, laughing, filling the hallways with the kind of noise that no longer hurt his ears. Outside, the sky stretched clean and pale. Their mother waited by the curb, waving. "Hey, you two," she called. "Gran's making dinner if we hurry." "Coming," Lucy answered. She hopped down the steps beside Daniel. the camera bouncing lightly in her backpack. They drove home with the windows cracked, wind tangling her hair. Music drifted from the radio, soft guitar notes, the kind her mother liked on quieter days. Daniel rested his head back, eyes half closed, but peaceful. "Proud of you," their mother said over the hum. Lucy smiled from the back seat. "He said that already." "Then you can hear it twice," her mother replied, catching her daughter's reflection in the rearview mirror. "Once for being brave, once for being kind." The rest of the ride passed in easy silence. When they reached home, late sunlight washed across the kitchen counters. Daniel grabbed the mail. Lucy unpacked her backpack. From its front pocket, she pulled the camera and set it on the table. "You're filming again?" her mother asked. "Not today," Lucy said. "Just want it right here." Dinner began with laughter over slightly burnt pasta. Daniel told a story about his art teacher misreading his project description. Their mother laughed so hard she nearly spilled her drink. The moment settled like a picture Lucy knew she'd remember. The safe kind of noise, the warmth that filled cracks. After dishes, they migrated to the porch. Evening air carried the scent of lilacs from the neighbor's yard. Fireflies blinked between the bushes. Lucy sat on the step, resting the camera on her knees. "Think you'll make another movie?" Daniel asked. "Maybe, but this one doesn't need filming," she said. "It's already happening." He smiled, brushing a strand of her hair behind her ear. "You've turned into a philosopher." "Just paying attention." Their mother leaned against the railing, watching them. The porch light flicked on, casting gentle halos around them. For a long minute, none of them spoke. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was full, like air before song. Daniel broke it first. "You know," he said, "I've been thinking about talking to our school counselor, not because things are bad, just to help other kids who might feel like I did." Lucy nudged his leg with her foot. "That sounds like the bravest thing yet." "Maybe," he admitted. "Or maybe it's just returning the favor." A small breeze stirred the wind chime by the window. Its clear notes moved through the evening. Lucy lifted the camera and tilted it toward the sound without pressing record. "This is what courage sounds like," she said quietly. Daniel nodded. Not loud, but steady. The first stars appeared, faint as pencil marks. Their mother went inside to fetch tea, leaving the two of them wrapped in the orange afterglow of sunset. Lucy leaned her head against her brother's shoulder. The camera balanced on her lap. "You ever think about that night?" she asked. "Sometimes," he said. "But mostly I think about this one." "Good." She closed her eyes, letting the warmth sink in. After a while, their mother returned, setting down 3 mugs on the step. Steam rose into the cooling air. She looked from one child to the other, her smile quiet but sure. "We're doing all right, aren't we?" "We are," Daniel said. Lucy nodded. "We're more than all right." They clinked mugs gently, the sound soft as a promise. From the yard, fireflies pulsed brighter, their rhythm like the steady glow of a heartbeat returning home. Later, inside, Lucy placed the camera on her desk beside her open notebook. She flipped to a clean page and wrote a single sentence before turning off the light. "Courage keeps the world alive." Then she whispered to the dark, certain he could hear from across the hall, "Good night, favorite person." A bright quiet settled over the house, carrying them forward together, small, steady, and strong. Morning came gentle, wrapped in pale gold that crept across Lucy's desk. The camera lay where she had left it the night before, lens aimed toward the window. She reached out, pressing the power button. A quiet hum filled the room, followed by the blink of its small red light. For a heartbeat, she just watched it, remembering the night when that same light had terrified her. Now it meant something else entirely, proof that beginnings could hide inside endings. She lifted the camera, turned it once toward the tidy bed, then to the shelf where her brother's sketches leaned against the wall. Downstairs came the sound of spoons clinking in mugs, their mother humming. Lucy smiled. The lens drifted to the doorway as footsteps approached. You filming again already? Daniel's voice carried sleep around its edges. Just for a second, she said. He leaned against the frame, healthier color warming his face. What's this one about? Nothing really, she answered. Just how the light looks different now. He nodded, quiet admiration behind his grin. I think you should keep doing that, showing people how things can look softer after storms. Before she could reply, their mother called from downstairs. Breakfast, before it gets cold. Lucy glanced once more through the viewfinder. The sun touched Daniel's sleeve, making it glow. It's perfect, she murmured and clicked the button. The red light faded to black. They ate together at the kitchen table, the room filled with the smell of toast and orange rind. Conversation wandered easily. Plans for the weekend, a teacher's birthday, the small tasks that made life ordinary again. Their mother laughed when Daniel teased her about forgetting the jam. It was the same table, the same chairs, but everything inside the moment had changed shape. After breakfast, Daniel gathered his sketchbook, preparing for art class. He paused by Lucy's desk on his way out. Keep that camera close, Lou, he said. You never know what good things it might catch next. I will, she promised. When the door shut behind him, silence returned. But it was a kind one, open and breathable. Lucy turned back to the camera. Through its lens, she framed the house in miniature, sunlight streaming through blinds, a coffee mug half full, her mother at the counter stacking plates. All the proof she needed that life had stayed. She pressed record and whispered, When everything was dark, we found each other, and that was enough. Then she stopped the footage and set the camera down gently. Later, as she walked through the living room, she noticed the faint reflection of her family in the window glass, 3 outlines moving with easy rhythm. The image looked like a steady heartbeat reflected in light. She stood there until it blurred, soft with warmth. Back upstairs, she placed the camera on her desk, clicked it off, and rested her hands over it. This time, she whispered, voice firm and calm, I'm turning it off because everything's okay now. The words settled into the room like a closing chord. Outside, the neighborhood stirred awake, children calling, birds sketching sound across the sky. Down the hall came her mother's laughter, joined by Daniel's voice, low and sure. Lucy opened her window. The breeze carried hints of rain washed clean away. For the first time in a long while, she didn't need the camera to remember. All she needed was this. Morning light, the rhythm of the safe footsteps, ordinary peace. She smiled toward the unseen lens that had started it all and spoke softly, as if to the listener beyond the screen. There are stories where courage hides in small rooms and quiet hearts. Ours was one. Then she breathed once more. Steady, bright, unafraid. If you want more stories like this, stories of quiet bravery and the moments that keep families whole, subscribe and stay close. There's more light ahead.